When you're up against a driver of similar skill level, you have to follow them closely in order to set up a pass, but it's not easy to do. And for many drivers, this ends up in punting the driver ahead. So, how can you be a master at following closely? Let me show you. I'm an instructor in real life and in Sims. I've won races in both. I'm also a physicist who uses science to help drivers like you win. When you're setting up a pass, what you're trying to do is to stay close, but not too close. You want to stay close because you don't want to give up your hard-earned gains. And you want to be in a position to attack or take advantage of mistakes. Also, you want to stay in their draft to gain speed or save fuel. But at the same time, you don't want to hit the car in front of you because this will slow you down, cause damage, likely give you a penalty point, or invoke the wrath of race control, which, in my league, usually ends in a drive-through penalty. And let's not be that guy. If you have pace, getting close is the easy part. But if you're watching this video, you're probably wondering, why do you punt the car in front of you every single time? And that's because you didn't adjust your markers. Check this out. First of all, if you're caught up, you're faster. And if you're faster, you're probably carrying more speed into the corners. In which case, the driver ahead might have an earlier brake point than you. If you don't anticipate that, you're gonna smack right into their rear bumper. That should be obvious. This second one should be less obvious. Say you were 0.2 seconds behind a car. If you're both going down the straight at 200 kilometers per hour, there's going to be an 11-meter gap nose to nose, or a 6.5-meter gap nose to bumper for a 4.5-meter long GT3 car. That's almost a car length and a half, so you're probably thinking you need to brake as late as possible to close that gap at the next corner. But get this, at the end of the straight, you have to enter a corner at 80 kilometers per hour. That 0.2 second gap is now 4.4 meters nose to nose. And yep, your car is now 10 centimeters into the lead car's bumper, and you just became that guy. So that's the reason you have to brake earlier than your normal marker. This is your key takeaway from this video. When you're at a slower speed, the same time gap will result in a shorter distance. Remember, speed equals distance over time. So if speed decreases and time stays the same, distance has to decrease. Now that we've identified why people are doing it wrong, here are 3 tips to following closely. Tip 1, there is no car. Do not focus your vision and attention on the car in front of you. It is very easy to have something called target fixation, which is fixating your vision on the car ahead. Naturally, drivers make the car go where they look, and that's why vision is such a fundamental skill when driving. And if you didn't know that, you should check this video out to cut your lap times. Anyway, if you stare at the car in front of you to try not to hit it, you're gonna hit it. Even if you don't hit it, you're likely to miss your marks because you lose sight of where your car is. Instead, focus on your markers and use your peripheral vision to keep track of the cars in front and around you. Cars are very big and they're at very similar speeds to you. They're fairly stationary in your vision, so you're not gonna miss them in your periphery. Your markers, on the other hand, are small and they will zoom by if you're not paying attention. You'll miss them, especially if they're obscured by the car in front. Also, to make a pass, you gotta hit your marks and execute that corner perfectly. If you're staring at the car ahead, you're gonna make mistakes. The second tip is to brake earlier and lighter. We already talked about why you need to brake earlier, but the key is that you need to leave excess braking power on the table. In other words, you should not use maximum stopping power to decelerate the car. You don't want to brake at the limit because you don't want to stop harder than the car in front. If you're behind a car going at the same speed and you stop harder, you're going to increase the gap between the two cars. What you want to do is maintain the gap or even reduce it. When you brake early and light, you will have time to adjust your braking power to manage that distance. If you're closing too quickly, add a bit more brake pressure. If you're falling behind, let off the brake a little bit. Done properly, this will set you up with just the right amount of gap that lets you accelerate and pass the lead car on the exit. If you're too far, then you'll still need to make up room in the next straight. But if you're too close, then you have to keep slowing down so you don't hit the car in front while the car ahead is already beginning to accelerate, and you're going to be left behind. Braking early and light will also save you fuel and tires since you'll be lifting early and braking less hard. For this last tip, if you really don't want to give up that hard-earned speed, this is what you can do. You need to offset your car. Basically, that means sidestepping the car from the car in front. You want to do this because you will get better visibility and have an easier access to an escape route. And because of that, you want to offset to the side that has more space. You also want to offset more and more as you get closer to the car in front and closer to the end of the straight. When the car's further away, you want to stay in the draft as much as possible. You'll have plenty of time to react to what the car in front does. But when you are very close, you have far less time to read the situation, react, and then adjust. So when you get closer, you want to be more offset. You can even offset your car entirely, at which point you're basically positioning for a pass. And the closer you are to the end of the straight, the more and more likely the lead car will begin to decelerate. So you'll need to be on your toes. And the benefit of offsetting is that the adjustment you need to make to avoid the car in front is much smaller. Even when you follow all those tips, following closely has its risks. The downside is you might not get out of the way in time and punt the car in front, ruining both your races. Equally bad is that you do get out of the way in time, but because you had to change lines so you don't punt the car ahead, you can't get the car slowed and dive bomb the car in front. Or at best, put yourself in the vortex of danger. You don't want to enter the vortex of danger intentionally or unintentionally. And for those who don't know what the vortex of danger is or why it's so dangerous, check this video out to see how you're causing wrecks and you don't even know it. Another downside is aero wash. This one applies to cars that have a lot of downforce. When you follow a car closely, you are in that car's aero wake. It's an area of low air pressure that the car has left behind as it moves through the air. Think of it as an air gap, and that's exactly the reason why you get a draft. When you're in the wake, you get less air resistance. But aerodynamics is called that for a reason. It needs air to work. So when your nose is squarely in this air gap, your front aero isn't going to work as well. The result is you'll have less front grip, and if you're not prepared for it, you're going to have trouble stopping the car and turning the car. You're going to overspeed and understeer. The last downside that I'll mention, which mostly applies to real-life driving, is cooling. When you're in the wake of the car ahead, your car is getting less air, which means your radiator is getting less air. Without air, your radiator can't cool your engine as efficiently, which can lead to overheating. In a real car, or maybe even in some sims, if you follow a car closely for a while, on a hot day, you're gonna overheat your car, and it doesn't take long. Just ask me how I know. You now have a pretty clear idea of what you need to do and not do to follow a car and set up a pass. But as you develop these skills, you're gonna make mistakes. So how do you practice this without being a total douche? You guessed it, the best place to practice is not in a race. And maybe not even a public practice session. The most productive and convenient way to practice this is with an AI session. Or you can hire me as your coach and follow me around, and I promise I won't get mad if you punt me. But all you gotta do is set up an AI session at any track with long straights. The more long straights with heavier brake zones, the better. Something like Red Bull Ring or Road America is pretty ideal. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna purposely make these AI a fair bit slower than you. You want to have faster pace than these cars so they don't leave you in the dust. It's fine if they're too slow, but you can't follow a car closely if they're too fast. When you're in the session, don't even think about passing them. Just find a car, drive up to them, and follow them around the track. Corner after corner, lap after lap. Then progressively follow it closer and closer. When you've done that a while, switch to another car with another pace, and you'll have to adjust to that pace. This is how you master following a car. I don't need to tell you how important it is when you want to make a pass. Like my other videos, by now you should know why you need to do it, how to do it, what mistakes you'll make, and how to practice and correct it. If you have any questions on this topic or anything else, let me know in the comments or shoot me a message on my Discord server by visiting www.lasttenth.racing from your browser. As always, keep sending it. Well, maybe not this time, but see you next time.